Coming up on this episode of the Roundtable. If you actually go and look at their examples to prove that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, they're so delicious, or they would be delicious if they weren't terrifying, that one of them is if you have 2 factories, each with 2 full machines and half the parts to make another, and you put those 2 factories together, you get 5 different machines. So 2 factories, 2 factories, 5. Alternatively, if you have 2 apples and 2 oranges, but you add them together, you do not get 4 apples or 4 oranges. You get 4 fruits and 2 apples.
Is this serious?
Oh, 100%. This is so real, David. That Biden clip we played in the previous segment, he's so gone. It's like every time we play a clip like that, I think it's not as bad as I remember. It can't be bad. It's worse. It's worse than you remember.
Welcome, everyone, once again to the Roundtable, the Claremont Institute's and the American Minds Editors and Publishers podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Williams, president of the Claremont Institute, publisher of the Claremont Review books and the American Mind. I'm joined, as always, by Matthew Peterson, vice president of education, founding editor of the American Mind, Spencer Clavin, assistant editor of the Claremont Review books and the American Mind, David Barr, managing editor of the American Mind, and back from vacation in the flesh. Well, digitally anyway. James Pullis, executive editor of the American Mind. Welcome.
I did vacation in the flesh. That's true.
That's true. That was,
now you are in the digital flesh, which feels like vacation. Something you would actually write an article about.
Well, we wanted to open with this weird story of what's the group called? The Election Integrity Project or something. Another group of concerned citizens against Trump. 40 of them have come forward as identifying themselves, and then it's a bunch of other anonymous folks. They war-gamed out election scenarios, and the weirdest one was their final scenario. I'm just going to read here from Byron York's summary of it. Just background. So they had people playing the media, the public, both campaigns, lawmakers, et cetera, and they went through various scenarios for how the election might go in November. And this is Byron York. The final scenario was the only one that posited a clear Trump victory. Biden, like Hillary Clinton before him, won the popular vote. In this case, the margin was a decisive 52 to 47%. But Trump won the Electoral College victory with 286 electoral votes. In other words, Trump was the clear winner of the presidency. Biden conceded defeat on election night, but then withdrew his concession. John Podesta was playing Biden. As Democratic anger grew over another election in which the winner lost the popular vote but won the Electoral College, the Biden campaign pushed the Democratic governors of Michigan and Wisconsin to disregard Trump's victory, overrule their state legislatures, and send Biden electors to Washington. House Democrats refused to recognize Trump's Electoral College victory. The Biden campaign also came up with what appears to be a demand for concessions in exchange for recognition of Trump's victory. Trump could take office if the Electoral College were eliminated. Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico were given statehood, and California was divided into 5 states to create more Democratic senators. Otherwise, California, Oregon, and Washington state would secede from the Union. In the end, the standoff, quote, remained unresolved. And Inauguration Day, quote, arrived without a single president-elect. The scenario ended with, quote, it was unclear what the military would do in this situation. So we're in weird times, folks. It appears that a good segment of, you look at the sort of who's who of this workshop, and it's not, Antifa and BLM. It's rather many of the grandees of the, rational center of this, as they might call themselves, of national politics. And yet this episode and then the long piece about it, but I think Ben Smith wrote it up for the New York Times. And then this sort of came at the end of the piece. Byron York picked it up and amplified it. But it sure looks to me like one of our major political parties or the elites in it want to cede the legitimacy of really 1860 all over again, or the 1860 election and possible secession and civil war. this for a party and a movement that wants to elect Biden to lower the temperature of American politics. This seems like an odd way of going about it.
Ugh, I grow weary, Ryan. I grow old before my time. This is one of my least popular sort of set of opinions, I feel. I know that everybody loves to read the tea leaves, but I am a devotee of the great science fiction novelist Michael Crichton here, author of Jurassic Park, among other things, who famously kind of dissented from the global warming orthodoxy by saying basically you can't predict the weather tomorrow, and you think you're going to predict. And this is I'm reading now from the Boston Globe summary of this. This seems to me to be one of the most Baroque iterations of this impulse to game out 1,000 removes from here what will happen in 2021 and so forth. Boston Globe, what if President Trump refuses to concede a loss, as he publicly hinted recently he might do? How far could he go to preserve his power? And what if Democrats refuse to give in? I mean, that whole series of sentences just suggests to me that this proceeds along assumptions, Republican and Democrat, bipartisan, however it may have been. This whole thing proceeds according to the assumptions of the ruling class, which is that Trump's tweets are to be read utterly without humor, that we should take seriously as a serious constitutional threat everything he says on Twitter. I don't know. I mean, how worthwhile is this? Am I being just too cynical?
Well, I do think there is one hypothetical that is worth indulging, which is, what if everyone in America Googled John Podesta's name? And in fact, here are the autofills straight from Google itself.
Tell us.
John Podesta art, John Podesta art collection, John Podesta email, and then finally rounding out the top 5 John Podesta war games. So
no spirit cooking, James? I'm just so
no spirit cooking. But I'm surprised that Podesta didn't make the President Biden he was playing just spend the entire time in his basement staring at pervy pedo art. But I do wonder if a man of Podesta's sketchy online reputation still has a home at the top of this political party. It's not entirely clear to me that the opposition that Trump will face if this kind of scenario plays out is going to be able to execute on their plans as well as sometimes we in our circles worry that they might. This is not a team that's like at peak condition, right?
Yeah, I don't know about that, James. What do you mean? Could you elaborate a little bit? I think as a counterexample of the way in which the sort of organized elite opposition, both in terms of message discipline and in terms of, throwing some wrenches in the works of the administration, whether it's sort of across Obama holdovers or the shadow comms operation being run by the Obama folks still in D.C. I don't know. This seems to be a pretty healthy, pretty active, pretty conspiratorial, and pretty effective opposition. So why shouldn't we expect them to be effective between November and January? Should it come to that?
Well, I think that in what you say is true, and yet it hasn't saved them yet. They've thrown the kitchen sink at the Trump White House, and yet there he is, having to be silenced by Twitter, which we can maybe talk about later.
Right. No, fair enough. Yeah.
They've rolled out every inside man and woman that they have been able to muster. All very well credentialed, nominally elites, people who were groomed and raised and programmed in some ways to keep a steady hand on the ship of state, including the deep state. And what good has it done them? So far, not much. And so here it is heading into November. We're finally going to get drumped this time. We've got it all gamed out. Obviously, the stakes are high, and obviously you can't take anything for granted either way. But I think, we do have to consider the possibility that that the anti-Trump alliance is simply not as competent and not as perceptive of reality as they think they are. they continue to sort of lead themselves astray. And this goes back, deep into the Obama years, when shock after shock. How could Libya have gone wrong? How could I have bungled my Syria policy? Oh, how could the Iranians have turned out to be negotiating in bad faith? Surprise after surprise. And there might be one final surprise in store.
This does sort of illuminate the fact that, all of the questions that are raised by this war games shenanigan are interesting and valid in questions. It's just that the war game itself tells us absolutely zero about the answer to them. So one of the questions that this whole thing raises is the one that you indicate, James. Will the Biden coalition and the kind of shadowy BLM Soros-funded groundswell movement, or actually elite movement behind the whole thing, be competent enough to actually overtake the country and remake it from the ground up, as they increasingly openly claim that they wish to do? The other one is, who, if anyone, is going to concede the results of a contested election. It's frequently sort of posited that if the left wins, then we'll have at least a quieter country because all of this rioting will go well. My dad is always telling me this is like the beaten wife syndrome. Maybe if I give him what he wants, he'll stop abusing me. And that's kind of, I think there's validity to that. We have just this Washington Examiner article about a new report that, in fact, it's the Democrats who will be unwilling to accept a contested election or even just a close election, which sounds much more plausible to me. But all of these questions are going concerns and important things to discuss. It's just that we don't actually know anything new about them as a result of this war game.
Regardless of the competence then of Podesta, I mean, the Podesta brothers are both competent and incompetent. I mean, they did lose the election. At the same time, they wisely closed down the Podesta group as soon as there was a scent that one of the most powerful consulting groups in Washington, D.C. was involved in the same kind of Ukrainian garbage that everyone else was, and that because the Mueller investigation was going on legally, that could come out. No one even talks about this, right? I mean, that's how bad our media is. One of the most powerful consulting groups in Washington, D.C. overnight just shut down and fired everyone so that nothing could be investigated about what it was doing. These are not nice people. And I don't know. I mean, on the other hand, I kind of feel what Ryan's saying, because, there's a lot of pedophiles who are pretty competent, at doing what they do. But at the same time, leave it aside for a minute. What's at stake here? And just what Spencer's saying, what is the left actually up to? And I just want to read a few things briefly to get this on the table, because I think it's important, very important, as to what's going to happen in November. So the last line of the article is that the New York Times article that all this is stemming from said the House named Mr. Biden president, the Senate and White House stuck with Mr. Trump. At that point in the scenario, the nation stopped looking to the media for cues and waited to see what the military would do. Now, let's think about what that means for the New York Times to say that. Why would they say that? Who are they speaking to? I would say they're speaking to the military. They're letting the military know that this is what's expected of them. And after all, this is what Joe Biden has said is expected of them. He has said, I am absolutely convinced they will escort him from the White House with great dispatch. In other words, Joe Biden, the meat puppet that he now is, he was asked on the Daily Show whether he's thought about Trump refusing to leave office. He said, yes, I have. And then, as the Hill article on this says, he went on to list a number of former high-ranking military officials who already made sure to speak out about Trump's actions in response to the protests, and all signaled that they were part of the woke agenda. And no one could ever use U.S. troops to keep peace in U.S. cities, except for the fact we've done that multiple times in the near past. And so the military officials were already saying, we're on your side to the left. And Biden, who can hardly get a sentence straight, says, I promise, I'm absolutely convinced they will escort him from the White House with great dispatch. And now, the third part of this, there are a ton of articles out there that are worth looking at because the left likes to project what it's going to do upon the right, ton of articles with titles like "How Trump is Going to Steal the Election." And, let me just take one of them that the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace reprinted by Dan Baer. And the line that he has in here is, senior leaders and former military chiefs have also made statements that ought to give Trump pause in thinking that he could enlist them in an illegitimate effort to hold power, unquote. So what's that telling us? That's telling us that there absolutely is a threat here of a hard coup in November by the left, because they fully expect the election. Of course, it's going to be disputed in a million different ways legally. It's going to be a complete cluster in a variety of ways. And they're already saying, but of course, the military will be on the right side, right?
Yeah, the seeding of the ground is remarkable. It reminds me, Matt, of these articles that have been popping up. They started about a month ago with who's that fallen star? Friedman from the New York Times. No, I meant that seriously. I totally forgot his name. Who wrote, why do we need the debate? Why should Biden debate Trump? So there are a few fail safes they've put in place, but if that all goes south, this is their their nuclear option.
Yeah, this is on some level. This is I can't tell which metaphor to use. It's either the elephant in the room or it's hiding in plain sight or something, because an independent military or a military led by a sort of self-appointed autocrat is like, it's all over. That's the end game. That's when you have officially moved into coup territory. And
Caesarism, right?
That's Caesar.
Sort,
well, right. I mean, Caesar is, of course, what I have in mind.
Yeah.
And all that sort of turmoil at the end of the Republic, Pompey and Antony and all those guys who basically were trying to wrest control of the military away from the state apparatus. And the left has been making gestures in this direction forever. That getting cops to kneel is part of this. Getting state troopers to kneel is part of this. So the idea that that's far-fetched is based only on our own sort of inertia and complacency, that this sort of thing can never happen in America. Of course it can happen. Of course the left wants it to happen. And they will do it if they feel like they have a good shot. I don't think that any kind of scruples about constitutionality will hold them back.
We should add for listeners, Spencer, that it's not, they don't even have to get military officials at the top to kneel, because it's already the case, and a lot of conservatives don't even realize this, that the top pyramid, which extends very far down the chain of command, they are already compromised. Already, to get ahead, just like in the C-suite of big corporations, they have to be woke in order, or at least recite the words in order to get ahead. And that has already happened. That's already the case. So the top pyramid in charge of the military, there are some exceptions, and there's certainly people who recite the mantras and don't believe them. But in order to get ahead, they already have to be woke. That's already the case. And the other thing we should add too is, when we talk about the cluster F that's going to happen, the mail-in ballots and things like that, it's not like the Fox News kind of mantra that the left is going to cheat. It's not so much about cheating. It's making sure that it takes weeks to count the ballots, and there's a ton of ways to dispute the results. And that's what they want. They want to muddy the waters as much as possible because it gives them leeway to muck with things.
Yeah, well, whatever, ex-Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman is the name that immediately occurs here, right? This is the guy that testified against Trump in the whole Ukraine nothing burger fiasco. But there have been numerous military officials who have come out and said something to the effect of, if Trump tries to, I think usually the term used is seize power, by which is implied, tries to take the election when he has won it by somehow tenuous means, then will be a kind of backstop, which is really bad signaling. That's just deeply unhealthy. And as you say, Matt, that's already so much further gone than we would wish to be. But because many of our kind of Republican leaders are asleep on this, they don't read those tea leaves. They don't recognize those signs. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right to indicate that like this could already be way further gone than we think. And it definitely could be, it's definitely plausible. The only question really is James's question about competency, right? It's just a question whether they're able to actually marshal those forces to their own benefit.
No, definitely. I would just say real quick, it's not tea leaves, it's banana leaves.
Yeah. Lol.
That's the republic that we're moving towards.
Yeah, the Biden camp, of course, and I hope the Trump team knows this and are doing something about it or to counter it. But you know, the Biden campaign is boasting they have 600 lawyers ready to litigate all this, and Matt brought it up, but I would just point everyone to one little piece in this puzzle, which I think does not bode well for November. I think there's a good chance that this election will make the recount fiasco of 2000 look like a picnic. And this New York Times piece from August 3rd titled "Why the Botched New York City Primary Has Become the November Nightmare." They got basically 400,000 mail-in ballots, and there are challenges from candidates. It's 6 weeks later, and 2 congressional races are still up in the air. The canary in the coal mine. That's what people are talking about it in terms of November's election. People on the elites on the right, and I hope the Trump campaign are preparing for this. And, it might not be a crazy idea for folks on the right to run their own war game and projections and try to anticipate what might happen. Let's just close this segment with the man of the hour, actually, who might be put into place by hook or crook. That is Mr. Biden, who continues his basement campaign. And we have a clip. So we've talked about this before, I think, to even only the most rabid partisans of the left or the sort of addled brains of never Trumpers. Only those folks can really deny Biden's decline. He's an old man and it's showing. And so let's close the segment with just a quick clip, and then we can say something quickly and transition.
The way China will respond is when we gather the rest of the world that in fact envision in open trade, and making sure that we're in a position that the world that we deal with WHO the right way. That in fact that's when things began to change. That's when China's behavior is going to change.
People keep trying the partisans keep trying to say, oh, come on, you guys are being unreasonable. Biden's always had a bit of a speech impediment since he was a kid. He's fine. He did fine at the debates. This is just a big nothing burger. We remain very skeptical of that claim. And I think evidence continues to mount every day.
The evidence to me suggests that he may not, in fact, make it to the convention that isn't happening as the nominee, and may just simply hand the torch to someone else. I know that the DNC has complicated ways of determining who the nominee is, even on a good day, much less under these kinds of circumstances. But I mean, they can't keep him completely off the campaign trail, can they?
Yeah, I agree with this as well. I mean, why, if they know he's this bad, after the convention is the time actually when he's chosen, when there's a way in which he can step down. I still think that's a distinct possibility. And I wonder if that isn't what's holding up the vice presidential pick. It's not just that he's, meat puppet at this point, but it's also they might be thinking he's going to have to step down, and they might just get that over with right after the convention.
Yeah, but they don't have any control over when he picks a Veep. But you suspect, Matt, that it's possible that there's an internal pressure campaign going on.
Yeah, I think if you imagine if you're dealing with a guy who he's probably a stubborn old coot, right? I mean, he's a stubborn old guy, and you're dealing with him, and then you're thinking in the party leadership, which did gang together. You can maybe even hear my 2-year-old daughter begging outside the door.
Eleanor wants in.
She's pissed off, man. She is the right. We're talking about Biden.
She's on the cognitive ascent.
Yeah.
Ellie's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
She regards herself as kind of a princess who gets to do whatever she wants, and it's pretty much true. It's just the way it is. But so I could easily see that the politics going on are severe, because if you are thinking reasonably, at the time you can switch him out is after the convention if you get him to step down. And so it may be his own belligerence, but it is remarkable that he hasn't picked someone yet, and no one's talking about that. Molly Hemingway, I think it was today or yesterday, had a tweet about it. I mean, he promised this August 1st. So what's going on there? And now he's not going to the convention. If we had any kind of reasonable press, you'd be saying something fishy is going on, and it's still possible to switch him out once they pick him. I think it gets even easier if he steps down, but if not, maybe the bottom line is I'm not convinced that he's even going to remain the nominee.
But let me ask you a question, Matt, really quick. We talk about Biden's cognitive decline, and we talk about, I guess in kind of vague terms, who his handlers are. I get this image of like 3 or 4 corn pops or whatever these demons of his past, like being like a little Miriam. Yeah. What were they called again? What was the fellow's name?
Yeah, corn pop.
Corn pop.
Yeah.
Yeah. But seriously, who are we talking about when we say that decisions are being made on his behalf? Because I take the cognitive decline, Biden's cognitive decline, I take seriously.
Well, I think when you look at that War Games article, you see a lot of the players. It's what James is talking about.
So it's the same old Clintonite folks?
The same old Democratic Party establishment, except it's not the Clintons who are in charge. It's Obama, really, and his folks. And look, they banded together in a remarkable way to make sure that they didn't get their own Trump with Bernie or whoever else. So they banded together to get people out of races at key times. And a lot of power was moved very fast in a unified way. They learned from the Republicans, and they made sure they didn't clog up the vote, and they moved for Biden. And Bloomberg did this. Like, everyone kind of acted together in a way that was really remarkable. So now you have people who are clowns. Tucker had a great segment on this the other night about the VP, supposed runner.
Veep stakes.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are just complete clowns. But someone like Susan Rice is not. And as he said, she's very smart. She's ever since she went on air and lied for the Obamas, she was pissed afterwards and like, you're going to give me something. And she indeed has got something every time and moved up the ladder. So you have some smart, ruthless people who are fighting amongst themselves about what's going to happen. And, in the meantime, I don't know. I would imagine that Biden is a stubborn old bastard as well. Right. And so this is a train wreck internally, and it's not going to end well for some of the individuals involved. But it's going to be very interesting to see what comes out of it. And I just don't think you can count on Biden being the guy moving forward if they can find a convenient way to get him off the ramp. And we haven't seen the end of this drama.
He'd say you've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything. You've got to be your own man, not a puppet on a string. Never compromise what's right and uphold your family name. You've got to stand for something or you'll fall for anything.
In a nice contrast to Basement Joe's declining powers, we just wanted to play partly because it's hilarious. So, I mean, with Trump, there's a few camps, right? We all have friends who are on the left who can't stand Trump, who think that when they send us the next clip of him mispronouncing something or being Trumpy in his various ways rhetorically, that this will be the thing that will finally admit, you're right, I've got to vote for Joe.
I don't have any of those friends.
No,
anymore, right?
You've lost them all,
to.
Spencer.
That's
now.
right, yeah.
But what and some of our never Trump friends too, but what they never seem to understand is, I mean, come on, those of us who've made our peace with Trump made it a long time ago. His faults, whatever they are, and all presidents have them, and they're of differing kinds. They're kind of baked in the cake at this point. So he is hilarious at times, and this is one of those examples. Just some the background of this. So this is Trump talking about the cognitive test that he's taken. The one that when Biden was asked whether he'd taken it by, I think, a CNBC reporter, he did his usual sort of Come on, man. He was indignant that he would be. Why would I take that test? I mean, that's like I'm embellishing a bit and just paraphrasing, but that's like me asking you if you took a cocaine test before you came on this interview, this is the cognitive test that everyone's referring to, and this is how Trump responded to it.
Like a memory question. It's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good.
Yeah, so I don't know. This is where we are in national politics. Some of us kind of find the man charming because he's just himself all the time, and others find it new reasons to be appalled by his sort of demeanor that's always Trump-like. But that's a nice contrast to Biden. I mean, whatever you want to say about Trump, and people have their criticisms across the spectrum, and given their level of derangement syndrome, but he seems in pretty decent possession of his faculties. That hasn't seemed to have declined. I mean, he talks the way he always has, and that's just one more example. So. Yeah.
Well, it's so entertaining, but am I crazy to think that there's actually some validity to it? I mean, that Biden clip we played in the previous segment, he's so gone. It's like every time we play a clip like that, I think it's not as bad as I remember. It can't be bad. It's worse. It's worse than you remember. And then Trump, for all the sort of funny hit pieces that were written in 2016 in the lead up to the election of his speaking style, it is the speaking style that it is. It represents his mind in the full possession of what lucidity it has. I happen to think that there's actually a lot of wisdom and insight in many of the things that he says, despite sometimes they're being unhinged and so forth. Anyway, all this is a long-winded way of saying he's actually capable of doing that. I'm not sure Biden is off the cuff at this point. And they must be, all this speculation that we're doing about what his team, what Biden's team must be like internally. I mean, they must be looking around and kind of pulling at their collars and saying, I don't know, man, this guy is really out there. I do have, despite my joke earlier, I do have friends who are denying this, who will really just go to bat for Biden as compos mentis, but I can't see it. And I actually think that Trump is making a good case here. I think he should make it more, although what do you guys think about this? Should Trump be going for Biden on this more, or should he be sort of more substantive about his campaign?
Really quick. Sorry, Matt, you go if you want.
It's real quick. Just in the clip, Spencer, how can he not go for it when Biden is protesting arguments against his mental fitness, and he can't say the word fitness?
Right.
I thought that when I was a young man, I looked forward to old age, and then faking that I was enfeebled so I could steal. This was like when I was in high school. So I was wondering if Biden, this is part of a long play. So he's just pretending degeneration is setting in so he can massage some shoulders, smell some hair. So
I'm sorry.
That thought had crossed my mind, but I'm a conspiracy theorist.
I'm sorry, David. The whole segment is now just about unpacking that little psychological tidbit that you revealed.
I wanted to go back. Yeah, I wanted to go back. What would you be able to steal? Like you just pin your crazy.
Oh yeah, just steal. I mean, whatever I wanted, because you're old.
It's like it's Barr's geriatric ring of Gyges equivalent or analog. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah,
when you're senile, they let you do it.
Yeah, it's the
they let you be president even so.
It's the ring of Abe Simpson. Yeah,
I do sort of wonder how it can be that there is actually so little criticism or even complaining coming out of both sides. On the topic of here I am being inarticulate, trying to describe the phenomenon of being inarticulate.
Form follows meaning, James.
Yeah, thank you. I think the internet has changed the way we speak and think so much already that if either Trump or Biden got up and spoke like a Paul Ryan or like a I don't know who's the equivalent of a Paul Ryan on the left, like a Bill Bradley, people would find it quite off-putting and somehow misaligned with the moment. I think there is a slice of the media elite that seems to be pining away for, a very conventional, well-spoken, sort of predictably wonky figurehead in politics. But I don't think that style of communication or that vibe of leadership squares with the public mind at all at this point. So, I'm certainly not celebrating the inarticulate politics, but I do think that we need to be prepared for the way leaders speak and the way rhetoric works to continue to change offline as well as online. And in some cases, to be prepared to lean into that change, even if it seems a little bizarre.
Yeah, David and I were talking unrelatedly this morning about elocution training and the kind of various British tradition, especially of like actually practicing how to speak. As a biographical side note, I am told that when I was a toddler learning to speak, I locked myself in the bathroom and practiced talking before anybody else could hear me. So
this explains so much.
Is it not? It's like the most. It's the most.
Now this is your job.
Yeah, it's the most revealing childhood story about me or anybody that I've ever heard. Anyway, I think, James, this is so there's so much here, right? This transformation is more profound than. It's as profound as we would ever want it to be. There's just so much to unpack about it. We've talked about before about how Trump is kind of a native digital rhetorician. Somehow he manages to actually express himself. Bernie Sanders is probably the only other politician alive who kind of gets at this. And Obama could tell that it was coming, but just couldn't do it. So he ended up having weird, like BuzzFeed interviews with Glozell, who's a lady that bathes in Fruit Loops. Look this up. This is real. But the weird flailing gestures that politicians have made up to this point to kind of capture what is the new eloquence, which is not the old eloquence. It's not the kind of fluent, quasi-British Anglophone mode of speaking in perfect paragraphs, but is instead a kind of more gestural, referential, mimetic Twitter speak. That is here to stay. And yeah, the politician that can grasp it is the one that is going to do well, as Trump has done.
And from what I can tell, just real quick, from what I can tell on the socials, including the soon to be sold to Microsoft TikTok, the most memeable phrases to come out of Barack Obama's mouth are the least articulate. So, the memes that I've seen are of Obama going, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. And that, if that's his legacy as far as a rhetorician is concerned, I think that, the era of the West Wing is good and truly behind us.
Yes. And let's just like break this down a little bit more. I mean, what made what we call great rhetoric was either you were reciting things for radio or TV. And when you were reciting things for radio, there was still an oral entrancement with words. You could still write a Churchillian speech. I mean, those are things you just heard via audio. And that was a completely different medium. And as soon as you got to TV, it became this thing where you're writing a speech and you're presenting yourself as this clean-cut sort of individual who is going to recite the lines that you're reading. I mean, you're reading and you have a team of speechwriters. You've always had a team of speechwriters on TV for all these presidents, whether they were involved in writing them or not. And you were hoping that part of that speech would be cut or be attractive and be cut out of the speech, copied and pasted for the televisual medium. And so you'd be on the half-hour news program. And that entire dynamic is completely gone. So you need the sprezzatura, you need the Italian, you need to cultivate an off-the-cuff aura that's actually very well practiced and that gets across your point. And if you continue along the old lines of the person reading the speech and hoping for a few snippets to be on the news, you will sound inauthentic. And that's exactly what's happened. Like, everyone knows now. It's interesting with Trump, right? Well, he's just reading a speech. What the hell do you think the last 70 years of presidents have been doing? there have been reading a speech that maybe they helped on, but other people wrote. But now all of a sudden, it really goes for all politicians. We recognize that they are all meat puppets up there reading speeches, and we want to know who they really are. And that's what the digital does. It makes us so we can actually know something about that person. And the more that they convey a little bit of that personality, the better. And the more they are informal, the better in a sense. But of course, the new elite or the new powerful mode of rhetoric is you still should be thinking about your image if you're a politician, but you're able to talk off the cuff.
Yeah,
and I think paradoxically, even though everyone's worried about this will lead to a kind of a retardation of politics or a dumbing down of things, I think actually it's going to allow some people who are very well educated to rise, as in the Renaissance, where they had to just off the cuff answer questions, and people expected that. Because what I think what a lot of people didn't realize, and a lot of boomers still don't realize, is people who are governors and senators and all these things, it's not very impressive. They're not very impressive people, actually, many times. They have a coterie of people around them who write everything for them. And if you actually just take them out of their element and start talking to them, they're not all that. They're not very impressive. And now kind of everyone realizes that in the base of the public.
Yeah, this is okay. There's like that you can never stop talking about this, in my opinion. Like there's so much here because on the one hand, right, pretending that your rhetoric isn't rhetoric and pretending that your practiced and studied self-presentation is not practiced or studied is as old as the art of rhetoric itself, right? Demosthenes, Isocrates, all these great rhetoricians have these passages where they say, I'm not very good at speaking. The best one, in my opinion, is Plato on the modes of music, where he says, Socrates says, I don't know the modes, but here is a lengthy disquisition on the sort of various forms of music in the way. This is very old, but the difference in digital media that you're referring to, Matt, is very real, I think, which is that for a long time, at least, we've had boundaries to where your rhetoric is, right? You get on the stage and you make the speech and then you get off and you're no longer under scrutiny because the cameras aren't on you anymore. And now the cameras are always on you. So there has to be some form of selling yourself as a kind of perpetual brand, as like always being, and being off the cuff kind of is the content, which is really hard for a lot of politicians to do. Yeah,
and just think about individuals, like everyone listening. I mean, you're all probably on social media in some fashion. It's respectable just to get the hell off and live your life, of course. But if you are going to be on it, the most powerful social media reveals a little bit of the personal. That's what people like. But of course you can't actually, you'd be a psycho or a psychopath if you revealed your personal life online all the time. So you have to be selective about it. And I think the best rhetoric, so to speak, of the 21st century is going to be people who they can reveal some of it, but they're doing it carefully and they're not being dishonest. They're not just being, look at what I just made for dinner and I do this every night. They're being somewhat honest about it and revealing a little bit of themselves, but in a way that this is a cultivated affect that can be still honest and get across powerful rhetorical points. And that's why actually mommy blogging is so powerful. It's one of the only areas.
This is the pivot I've been waiting for.
I was telling this to a friend of mine, Noelle Mering. She's published a great book called Theology of the Home. And she's doing a Theology of the Home too. It's a beautiful book and actually really smart. And a couple other books she's published for American Mind. And I was saying what you kind of show in the Theology of the Home book is the power of mommy blogging, because it's showing a way of life that these feminists, for instance, is a great article a couple years back by a New York Times, feminist type. And she was like revealing to her readers, I have to say, I do sometimes just look at Mormon mommy blogs in my free time. And I'm very attracted to their life.
That is the pull quote.
Because it's showing a kind of way of life that's very natural, right? And what I would say is, so it's not as if everyone should be online doing this, but what is very powerful is it's an affect, but you can be honest about it and actually, I think, do a lot of good through this medium and this rhetoric. The problem, of course, is that most of the people in politics now have no friggin' clue about how this works. And Trump, in some ways due to his defects, I'll just say, he's very, very good at it.
Yeah, and it's all wrapped up in this question of the debates too. as you guys have all been talking, I've come to a newish conclusion. It's probably not groundbreaking or shattering or anything, but it's interesting. So there's a dual objection in a way by the Democrats to debates. And you all heard it here first. Weeks ago, we talked about how, and I tweeted about it too, Tom Friedman, who David brought it up in the last segment, started talking about how, Trump shouldn't debate, or Biden shouldn't debate Trump unless he commits to not doing X, Y, or Z, or commits to releasing his tax returns. The argument you saw taking shape, we clearly said was an op 4 weeks ago, which was, no, what the left has to do, because they're worried about, and the Biden team and the people around Biden are worried about his ability to perform on the debate stage. What you have to do is seed the ground for this argument, which is basically it's immoral to debate Trump because he's immoral and unscrupulous. Thus, you shouldn't debate him. Those are the old rules in a way, which is to say, well, the guy just lies all the time, so why would you debate him? It's sort of an unfair playing field. My one objection to it would be, look, if you're in full possession of your faculties, you can hold your own with a liar. Just bury him with facts and outmaneuver him. But I think the other real part of this is they all saw, both in the primary and then in the general election last time, that Trump really understood the debates for what they were. Our modern debates are not debates. It's a stagecraft circus, and Trump's just better at it than any of them. And he just has an intuitive feel for that medium better than they do because he's been on TV a lot and has this sort of, idiot savant grasp of all this stuff. That's being a little unfair, born of a long study of marketing and all this stuff. So I think the objection, the implicit objection, or the buried objection to Biden debating is not that Trump lies all the time, or even that Biden is not cognitively up to it, but it's really, just the uncertainty of going up against a man who seems to have mastered this medium in a way that a lot of people still don't understand. A lot of people on the right really object to it. To admit that these are a farce and it's just a show is kind of to admit something ugly about modern rhetoric and its interaction with TV and everything else. And so it's there's I think a complicated bit of it's a witch's brew of various objections to this whole thing that is the modern presidential debate. But I think just the brass tacks and politics of it, I think Trump will make great hay out of Biden refusing to debate. And Biden has said so far that, despite all the people basically writing arguments that are political cover for him doing it, that he still wants to debate. But we'll see.
That's part of the cover. The arguments Biden claiming that he wants to is part of the cover.
No, sure.
A push-up contest or a fist fight behind the barn. Right?
It's another version of the, if I'm asked, I will refuse to run, all that kind of stuff. It's all stagecraft. Yes. I don't know. But the other thing too, Biden, whatever else we think of him, anyone who's followed his career knows that he's an ambitious politician, always has been. This is his third run for the presidency, I think. So there's a certain, there'd be a certain thematic objection to even a bunch of people around you saying, yeah, you really should sit this one out. Because if you see his interviews, at least his forward-facing presentation, he does not seem to be a man who's he's hiding in the basement, but he's certainly perfectly willing to go on all manner of live interviews and seems to think that there's not tons wrong with his general ability to perform.
You thrice did see that on the Loop recall. I thrice presented him the kingly crown. He thrice refused. Did this in Biden seem ambitious? This is the great insight of what is that? Mark Antony? Antony Cleopatra?
It's Antony's speech about Caesar's death.
Antony, right? Exactly.
Who, to Spencer's point earlier, is one of the most famous examples of someone who denies what he's actually doing.
Yeah.
He does rhetorically.
Spencer, when you talked about the old rhetorical methods of statesmen and demagogues, I immediately thought of that speech.
No, I don't want. I don't want to. Right. Yeah.
Just gonna bury him. That's all. I'm not gonna praise him.
Mm-hmm. The good men do is often interred with their bones. The evil that men do lives after them. So let it be with Caesar.
Okay, now we really have to stop. Next segment.
To be president, you have to be tough and sharp. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They say, that's amazing. How did you do that?
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
So they say, could you repeat that?
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
So I said, yeah. So it's
Person, woman, man, camera, TV.
Well, it's not the hardest task.
For our final segment, I wanted to bring up this evidence or this example of virtue and excellence in a time of cowardice, retreat, and before the forces of woke social and media pressure. And that is Trader Joe's. They got some flack about their brands. So Trader Joe's has always had a sort of fun and cheeky way of presenting some of its ethnic foods by calling its Mexican line of products Trader Jose's, or Latin American, more broadly speaking, and its Italian stuff Trader Giotto's, and its Asian cuisine Trader Ming's. Now, this is not the first objection to this kind of stuff. The left-wing objection to this goes way back, and even Trader Joe's, upon initial complaint about this stuff, looked like they were going to cave, but they quickly came roaring back with this wonderful statement. I encourage you all to look it up. But the gist of it was basically, I really love this too, because they basically said, look, first of all, we don't run our business in terms of petitions. Second, our customers really like this stuff. When that changes, we'll change. It was just wonderfully refreshing because their core argument was, come on, people, we're a business and we're in the business of selling stuff. And people kind of like the way that we've had fun with our ethnic foods. So why don't you all get out of here?
This is a veritable feast of delights for me. You guys usually have to sedate me because I'm pissed off about something, but now you're going to have to sedate me because I love this so much. I think probably the majority of what I eat is from Trader Joe's. I shop there every week. I love their food. I particularly love Trader Ming's, like wontons or whatever they are. They fry up real good. And this, what's so great. So what you say,
They
Ryan,
fry up real good. That's the most inarticulate Spencer you've ever heard. I love it.
it's a certain form of countrified eloquence.
Yeah.
Well, right. So everything that you say, Ryan, is true. It's awesome to see them say basically this is like, I mean, it's literally 1,000 people, which is a tiny drop in the bucket of Trader Joe's customers, and in fact, everybody famously, if you go woke, you go broke, right? That this is a minor elite set of concerns that has nothing to do with how Americans are actually viewing the world and selecting their products. And further, what's great about that is like the Trader Joe's packaging in the view of the woke crazies, like, is a little racist. And I say that not in any way to impute actual racism to it, but to say that, you know, the cancel culture people want us to be completely unable to make any reference, to be paralyzed, immobilized by our fear of making any reference to one another's race. But one of the central ways that America has always assimilated new races is with humor, is with kind of friendly, joshing gestures. It's actually a very masculine way of dealing with one another, to kind of make fun of each other for your differences. And when you make fun of somebody, when somebody makes fun of you for your differences, that's how you know it's going to be okay, at least like in the locker room, right? And this is what Trader Joe's is. It's like, Trader Ming's, Trader Giotto's. Like, I made some joke on Twitter, like, I'm so excited to go eat Trader Schmendrick's matzah. Like, you know, this just like, that's how Americans and American men especially assimilate to one another's sort of funny cultural differences. It is at the very heart of how America has worked racially in the best possible way, and in terms of immigration in the best possible way. And I'm so thrilled to be just like chowing down on Trader Ming's wontons.
I have a very quick practical question, Spencer. What's the finest product that Trader Joe's offers?
Oh, damn. So they have these fig like crackers that you put with cheese, and they have a great cheese selection. Every night we make a cheese board at my home with fig crackers, and they also have these little kind of just like water crackers, classic regular crackers, and they I don't actually think they're racially tinged, those crackers, but they're so good.
Yeah.
There are some ice cream sandwiches made with chocolate chip cookies that are, I think, better than not just every other food item in Trader Joe's, but better than all food items ever to have existed on planet Earth. And if you ever want to end my life, just present me with like a pallet of those ice cream sandwiches, and I will consume them all and then die.
Yeah. Yeah. Trader Joe's also have the bourgeois version of bum wine, which is $2 chuck, right? And their alcohol selection is actually pretty good.
Really nice wine.
And their home brand distilled stuff is pretty decent and quite affordable, I must say.
To the actual point at hand, I do find it to be extraordinary that this searing critique of late capitalism is coming from people who have seemingly given over their entire identity to their consumption patterns and their brand, their erotic relationship with the brand, which is supposedly the very hallmark of late capitalism. So, once again, like sort of sublimated self-loathing strikes at, in an attempt to ruin sort of quite quotidian social practice in the United States of America.
Yeah, I've sublimated my identity to the Trader Joe's brand, but I'm fully on board with that. I am a late stage capitalist.
You are simping. You are simping for Trader Joe's.
I'm the Chad simp for Trader Joe's.
That's insane, though. That's exactly true. I mean, this is exactly what urban elites loved not 5 minutes ago. They love the quote unquote cultural appropriation, which by the way is what culture is. It's appropriating stuff from other people, like combining on it, right? But they love that about Trader Joe's, and what's not to love? It's a great company. It's I always like the joke. Two jokes. One is the parking lot of the Trader Joe's is the Hobbesian state of nature. They're always really small, and it's insane. And once you get in there, you just realize it's every man for himself kind of thing. And the other thing I like to joke is that a lot of Trader Joe's these days, they don't accept ABDs. You actually have to have your PhD to get a job there. And I've known friends who are lawyers who were dissatisfied, in that first couple of years up to law school when they're treated like slaves, and they have the golden handcuffs and whatever, who were just like looking at the Trader Joe's website about benefits and what they get paid, and like, maybe that'd be okay.
Spencer, I like. Oh, sorry, go on, man.
Costco, for instance, which treats employees well, and finds the deals and whatever, and it's all fine. I would just say I'm just gonna say something subversive. There's a comedian, I'm sure he's not conservative, named Kyle Kinane. Kyle, with a K, and then the last name is Kinane. And Kyle Kinane has a segment on Trader Joe's and this exact issue, but he's in fact joking about it some years back as a comedian from it's an album called Death of a Party, and you can find it on YouTube. Kyle Kinane, Death of a Party, Trader Joe's. And he goes off about, the quote unquote racism of Trader Ming and everything else. And I think it's hilarious, and it's very American. And ultimately, this is the silliness that has now become serious. I don't know. Personally, I don't know how long Trader Joe's will last. It's great that they told these people to screw off. But things are so insane right now in the midst of this cultural revolution. I don't know what will happen.
They will fall when the Bernie supporters come out of their basement podcast studios and in fact reveal that the racism is not the problem, but it is in fact the trade that is the problem. Yeah. The original sin of Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
I think the only way for them to survive is to put every single food product under a racial category. So I have a lot of these I was going through in my head, but
You've got it all
now,
planned
now
out,
I'm
man.
too scared to say it out loud.
I've already
send the
floated
memo to
Trader
corporate.
Schmendrick's matzah. Come on, man.
Yeah.
Well,
Bring
I
it
was
out.
like Trader O'Shaughnessy's potatoes, but just everything. I mean,
When
Trader
I-
Pierre's wine.
When I got married, I have to say too, Trader Joe's is like a part of our life. My wife, Mary, it was hilarious because she was just used to shopping at Trader Joe's. Like she didn't go anywhere else. So going to an actual grocery store was weird for her. And then having kids, like you have to end up, going to a grocery store or even, the big box stores. And you start to, discover a love of that. But she really, like, our entire eating habits were based in the beginning on the fact that that's the only place Mary shopped for food.
It's more expensive. This is like really, grocery store deep dive now. But we went to Ralph's the other day, and I had always sort of conceived of Ralph's and Vaughn's as like, this is where you go for budget. But no, like Costco's where you go for budget. Trader Joe's is cheaper. That's insane to me. Like it's so bespoke and
A lot of basic items, and Mary still swears by this. She argues with all your normies about it, and like, look, you don't understand. Like, you actually get this cheaper at Trader Joe's, which is still true in many ways.
Yeah.
They have the best prepared frozen food section by far of any.
Yes, no doubt.
And they've had a lot of copiers. So our local Sprouts, who I don't think that's a national chain, might be, but Southwesterners know it, of course. Their prepared food section, the frozen section is a nice copy of Trader Joe's. It used to be that only cheap, gross food, like Hungry Man stuff was in the frozen dinner aisle, but it's actually now quite varied, quite organic, and diverse in the best sense of sources of food. And I think Trader Joe's is a leader in that. And they really do have the best frozen dessert section, as James alluded to. I mean, it's just there's no contest.
We and our listeners are all going to get a million online algorithmically curated advertisements now for like Trader Joe's.
Yeah. Our phones are all silent, but they're in here and around us.
Also,
Yeah.
we're going to get canceled because Trader Joe's is obviously racist.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll get free groceries.
It caters to all the people who are the most worried about racism in America. Well, white, wealthy liberals. And, they just didn't see what was in front of their faces for years. Yeah. And now all of a sudden they've been awoken.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, the really wealthy liberals, though, Trader Joe's probably been déclassé for a while. You go to Whole Foods yeah.
Well, but this is so interesting to me, actually. It's like
it's like a baseline. Like it gets over the line, right?
Right. Well, because like
Trader Joe's.
Yeah, that's right. It's acceptable.
I mean, I look around at my local Trader Joe's, and it's like the wokest pot. I'm sure I'm the most conservative person there, or just like the only conservative person there besides my boyfriend, who's also like the only conservative person there. And it's just like the fact that even there they could only find however many people nationwide to sign this petition, a sort of discountable number of people, does make me wonder about this sort of thing. Like, and the other part of this that kind of makes me laugh and wonder is the recent reaction to Hamilton. I listened to a Slate podcast recently in which all the sort of far lefties were sort of being, wait a second, like if we're tearing these people's statue down, but we love this musical, it's like they haven't put these two things together. And I actually wonder just like how much of that there is out there. Like most people are probably just like floating along happily until some crazy smooth brain comes along.
To be fair, Spencer, you're probably in one of the woker Trader Joe's demographically in the United States.
Yes.
But our Trader Joe's in Claremont. You mentioned the Hobbesian state of nature, Matt. Long ago, I once got a call from a long ago ex-girlfriend, and she was an ex at the time, a recent ex, and she said she was calling me and said, what do I do? Someone backed into me in the Trader Joe's parking lot. I said, don't admit fault. Call your insurance company and leave me alone. That was basically my response.
What happens in the parking lots, man?
Yeah, it is a universal law, though. It's so weird.
Yeah,
that for some reason Trader Joe's parking lots really are. It's red in tooth and claw.
It's because they're so small.
They're kind of like we don't care about how big it is.
Right. That's right.
Universe stuff. The parking lot is small. That's your problem.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
you see Trader Ming and Trader Giotto, and buy their products. But, Trader Giotto and Trader Ming worked really hard to bring this here from Asia and Italy.
Had to walk.
And, it's your concern to make the trek into our store. I kind of respect that.
Well, we wanted to bring up this weird controversy. It's how we know we're truly in round the bend in postmodern America and the West, really, when deconstructionism comes to mathematics. So James Lindsay, who's written a lot and intelligently on the wokeism and the sort of new weird obsessions of the modern left, he's got a book coming out. He participated with some other academics in this interesting experiment, which some of you have read about, no doubt, where they made up fake papers that were very absurd and very at sort of the leading edge of absurd social science. The misogyny of dog parks and this kind of stuff. And they got many of them accepted. James is a part of that crew and has a new book out called Cynical Theories. I think it's coming out later this month. Anyway, he's been on the leading edge of provoking this fight on Twitter, where really the lefties are now trying to convince us that, in fact, 2 + 2 does not equal 4, or does not always equal 4. It sometimes can equal 5. And they fold this critique of math and rationality into this larger critique of, disrupting the narrative of dominant whiteness and dominant Western civilization. And, if math and rationality and logic are all part of a white civilization, then of course, this thing that we all learn in grade school of addition, subtraction, etc., that seems to be sort of, we thought, impervious to social critique, is nonetheless swept up in the latest craze. It's not. It's been around. The seeds of it have been around. James and others have pointed out to those of us who are just waking up to this for a few decades at least. But it's now kind of gone mainstream in these weird times of national cultural revolution and politics. So, Spencer, this just seems ripe for.
Well, right.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh my gosh, no! I'm so excited to talk about 2 + 2 = 5. I mean, this is why when you make the joke about woke theory will eventually reach this X endpoint, everybody laughs, but then you're 100% right, and it's actually going to go farther, right? The 2 + 2 = 4 thing. I mean, it's literally from 1984. It's literally in Orwell's kind of foundational, and Chesterton also talked about this as the foundational bedrock of objective truth, that if you can say that, then you are okay. And if they are trying to make you say something other than that, then you are chipping away at the very foundations of all Western civilization and indeed society, full stop. And this is the case. I mean, what's really telling to me is if you actually go and look at their examples to prove that 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, they're so delicious, or they would be delicious if they weren't terrifying. That one of them is if you have 2 factories, each with 2 full machines and half the parts to make another, and you put those 2 factories together, you get 5 different machines. So 2 factories, 2 factories, 5. Alternatively, if you have 2 apples and 2 oranges, but you add them together, you do not get 4 apples or 4 oranges. You get 4 fruits and 2 apples.
Is this serious?
Oh, 100%.
This is a serious
This
thing?
is so
Are you
real, David.
talking about a serious thing?
David, listen to me. I am telling you,
I can't
and this is
accept this.
no, it's serious. I'm telling you, I have to impress upon you and our listeners that this is 100% po-faced, dead serious. Because in fact, that's the first reaction, right? Is this must be a joke. It is not a joke. And the reason one of the Weinstein brothers, are either Eric Weinstein or Brett Weinstein, whichever I can remember. I'm sorry, Weinsteins, I know that the Weinsteins listen to our podcast religiously, but I'm sorry that I've forgotten which brother it is. In any case, they said, they had a great thread about this. Why do they want this? They want it because if you can accept P and not P, then what is called the explosion hypothesis. This is a sort of logician's term of art. The explosion hypothesis kicks in. And that means that if you can accept a contradiction and its opposite, then you can accept any premise at all. And they want that. They want to claim that world where there is no objective reality. And in particular, they want to claim it for a racialized world. And this is the kind of fundamental racism of it, which again, is it really worthwhile even to point this out? But there it is. They want to claim that like this is kind of the Black, indigenous, native view of the world, that is somehow disconnected from our obvious intuitive ideas about mathematics, which are shared in fact by even societies.
What happens if a bridge falls down there and they want to compute the angle to like erect a new one?
This is why like the national divorce, peaceable national divorce, you would wonder if one country has math and the other has this stuff, where they don't believe in engineering or technology. And yeah, exactly.
It's all darkly ironic considering how many of these people's jobs are going to be replaced by AI over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
It's also ironic considering that so many of them are hostile to the idea that 1 + 1 = 3, which is the generative reproductive math. They would prefer that 1 + 1 = 2 and that children do not enter into the equation at all.
Wait, sorry, go on, James.
Oh, I was just going to continue my tirade by pointing out that in fact 1 + 1 could equal as many as 5 or 6 or 7, which is true blasphemy.
Spencer, you weren't saying that the Weinstein brothers were defending this on the grounds of advanced physics, were they?
No, the other way around. I mean, the
Weinsteins
had a very sophisticated argument, which I believe is true, that in order to have an actually philosophically sophisticated grasp of reality, you have to both acknowledge that there are subjective and objective truths. For example, there are photons moving about in the world in some objective space, but there is also the subjective experience of seeing light. So that was their kind of like more nuanced argument. But fundamentally, the reason that the wokies want 2 + 2 = 5 is because they want anything that they can claim. And that's why they're not actually making an argument. They're just trying to destroy you.
We should end. Matt's leaving
this
the room.
one takes care of itself over time, I think.
Mm-hmm.
No, right? I mean, structures just won't stand.
Yeah.
If they don't have children.
One can hope.
Right.
Well, thank you all for listening to the Roundtable. If you want to learn more, visit our websites at americanmind.org, claremont.org, and claremontreviewbooks.com. Don't forget to rate, review, share, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support the American Mind or the Claremont Institute, go to claremont.org/donate. Thanks to our production and engineering crew, Jake Gannon and Annalisa Lee. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you next week.
I'm gonna pop some tags. Only got $20 in my pocket. I'm hunting, looking for a come up.
This is odd because I've never experienced this before.
Are you sure that it's not you who are glitching, James?
Your AI malfunctioning.
Lawnmower man.
I can hear you, but I don't know.
I'm not doing anything differently.
Ahoy, hoy.
Doesn't even
amazing.
check on this laptop.
It's like a special effect.
Is it really that bad?
Yeah, it
It's
really
perfect
is.
every time. It's like a stutter.
Oh, what? It's James, DJ.
It's your boy. It's your boy James. This is the show, guys. It's a podcast.
Yeah, maybe we should just phone it in, so to speak.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I'll be here all night, folks.
Mm-hmm.
What number call?
What?
what number should he call?
There should be the email should have a link if he can get it from his phone. And it has a phone number.
Right. Okay. All right. Hang on.
This is making me think that the opener should be what? It should be thrift store. What? I'm gonna pop some tags.
Come on, man. That's like, what, did you take a cocaine test before you came on this show?
Also, like someone said, imagine if Trump asked a black journalist if he was a junkie.
Yeah. I mean, come on.